Another heist from year 2, another warehouse at night heist. Thankfully, unlike last time, this one is actually fun, despite following almost the exact same formula as previously. If nothing else though, this is a prime example of the idea not being the problem last time, but the execution. That is to say, Delivery Charge mostly executes its ideas much better than Party Powder did. Taking place in yet another warehouse at night, Delivery Charge focuses on the main warehouse of the Palatucci family, filled to the brim with armored transport vehicles of the exact same make as the one you looted way back in Road Rage. Depending on where they spawn, you can even drill into their underside just like in that heist. The main objective of this heist, similarly to Party Powder, is to simply steal as much from the Palatuccis as physically possible, whether the money you're after is in the armored transports or the on-site vault. Don't ask why a warehouse has a conspicuously bank-shaped vault. The real appeal of this heist is the actual layout of the warehouse itself and how conducive it is to the new movement options Payday 3 has compared to previous entries, more than living up to the title of a stealth sandbox akin to Payday 2's Shadow Raid heist, which is thematically fitting as well since both of these heists were made on more limited resources, reusing what was feasibly accessible at the time. Sneaking around the warehouse is some of the most fun stealth you can have in this game, especially once you understand what's where on the map. I might as well go over the layout. Starting off, there's a basement area next to a dock that you can potentially spawn at if you use the proper favor, accessible with a blue keycard that you can grab from the guard on said dock. Once inside, there's a vent you can climb into to access the upper area of the warehouse, or you can go through the nearest door into a locker room, finding a spare keycard in one of the lockers if you're patient enough to open all of them. The only other thing in the basement is a room that can randomly be either the camera room locked with a blue keycard, or an interesting room filled with a plethora of ammo consumables and guns in the wall that you can't loot. I say interesting because no other heist has an ammo room like this. Up the stairs into the side leads to the ground floor with a bunch of rooms and the aforementioned vault locked behind a red keycard, or a drill if you trip the alarm. In each of these rooms are piles of cash and some safes that can potentially hold donuts, which raises a lot of questions that I don't exactly feel like asking. Some of the money piles in these rooms, and even the safe if you use the favor for guaranteeing 30 bags, have die packs like in No Rest for the Wicked. Topical. Thankfully, the most of these you'll have to deal with at one time is 3 die packs, easily disabling them solo. In front of the money holding areas and taking up most of the floor space of the warehouse is the garage area, holding potentially trucks and armored transports, or even Wexia tech containers when you bring the refrigerated tech favor, working similarly to 99 boxes mechanically, even if the steps are a bit different, as this heist replaces the QR code lock with a red keycard lock, and the lock for the actual tech itself is a fingerprint scanner instead of the dreaded circles, or as newer players would experience, absolutely nothing. Seriously, put the fingerprint scanner on 99 boxes, the heist feels so naked without something blocking the tech inside the container. All of the loot you find in this heist is going to be from the ground floor, which can be a bit limiting on replays when you know where everything spawns, but in case you don't, that's what the upstairs can help with, since this area doesn't have much to speak of besides this storage area with crates that could contain one of this heist's 3 paintings you can loot, and this room locked behind a red keycard that contains a code to the safe downstairs. Thinking about it, why do you need the red keycard and the code for the safe when you need the red keycard to get the code in the first place? The other thing that you can find upstairs that's rather helpful, depending on whether or not the loot all spawn inside the vault or not, is this little map here, showing a drawn map of the heist and which transport the loot is being stored in for you to steal from. Plus, if you brought the favor for it, you can even steal one of the armored transports wholesale, working functionally exactly like it did in Road Rage, except without the opening it up and stealing what's inside part. You might have noticed that I went through the favors while I was talking about the layout of the heist, and that's because Delivery Charge is the first of, at the moment, 2 heists that let you actually purchase the favors from the vendor, and while I don't mind this, it can severely limit RNG in some cases like the boat favor. I would have much preferred if it was a permanent escape van, but in a way that's what the refrigerated tech favor does with the truck, albeit much to Shade's confusion, as she still tells you to secure bags in the van or sewers and stealth with this favor active.
You've got 2 options for securing the loot. Either take it back to the van, or drop it down to the sewers.
One interesting thing about using favors in this heist that I should probably mention is how when you use any of them besides the boat entrance, they cause all of the armored transports to not show up, which removes the one aspect of RNG that this heist actually has, that being a chance for another armored transport to show up, or keeping one from leaving if you're playing in stealth. I get why from a programming perspective, but it's no less aggravating regardless, especially when most of the enjoyment I get from this heist is figuring out where things are and how to get there, even if a vast majority of the loot is just cash. Although there are a decent amount of these containers outside you can infiltrate to potentially find 3 secret paintings, which would feel more gratifying to find if they weren't always guaranteed to be a thing you could loot. I mean, they're called secret paintings for crying out loud, why not make them actually a secret whether they'll show up or not? Besides the 3 paintings in these wooden crates you can find scattered throughout the heist, your primary loot is going to be money. Money, money, and more money. Up to 27 whole bags of it, and with that high a number, man, I wish there was more variety in what you were stealing. Remember that ammo room I mentioned earlier? Well, I'm going to be jumping ahead a bit, but I'm going to talk about Shopping Spree and two loot types in particular, the first of which is actual lootable guns. Since this is supposed to be the Palatucci's primary warehouse, they'd have some kind of weapons and a room full of ammo for you to steal, right? It could be random chance on whether you're able to steal these or not, what with the reinforced glass blocking it now, but having these be lootable would make this heist more interesting on replays, especially with how the favors are handled. Plus, it would also help with the verticality aspect of this heist, giving you a reason to go to the upstairs or the downstairs, depending on which room spawns where. Speaking of loot, the other kind of loot I think would work really well with delivery charge is some pre-cooked meth that the Palatucci's are smuggling out through Teddy Moo plushies. They made a whole game over this stupid thing. It should at least show up in the Palatucci's more often, don't you think? Even if it's something of a joke at this point, being able to loot more than money would certainly help with the replay value once you've used all of the favors to see what they do. Doubly so if they spawn on the upper or lower floors. Just have some already open Teddy Moos in these counting cages with meth for you to grab instead of money. Or alternatively, the last loot type I'd say would be good to add to this is one that could potentially replace the paintings, and that's just bags of cocaine to grab, similarly to party powder. Again, using the excuse of this being the primary warehouse of the Palatucci's. Seriously, there's a maximum of 30 bags you can get in this heist without any favors. I don't want 90% of them to be the exact same thing, because that gets boring very quickly. Maybe even use the rare metals from Road Rage to potentially appear inside the armored transports when they show up. Come on, the loot itself needs more variety. What thankfully doesn't need nearly as much variety is the escape when you go loud, since this has two consistent options when you play the heist without favors. Either you can secure loot in a chopper above the garage, or simply throw the bags into a shipping container of your own that Shade remotely controls with a crane, skipping the part with an antenna from Fear and Greed because, well, this place might be secure, but it's no stock market. One of the biggest issues I have with this heist as well is just how bland it can be once you realize there's not much of anything to steal besides money. It's part of why I actually think this heist works better without any favors and you have to actually go through the effort of looting the transports. Otherwise, it's basically asking how quickly can you get to the vault and loot it. Sure, everything's still on the same vertical level, but now you're going to different places than the same 3 counting cages and vault for most, if not all, of your loot. What if there's a chance there were only about 5 bags of money in these rooms in total and the rest of the loot was the various drugs the Palatucci's were trying to smuggle and sell? I didn't just bring up Shopping Spree purely because of the better variety of loot, but because it also adds in a good amount of options for this heist as well. This is the heist of cleverly reusing things that we've seen before, and while most of it is done well, there's still quite a bit of room for improvement. Also, I feel like I'm somewhat repeating myself here, but man, it really feels like every heist in Year 2 that isn't First World Bank loves having final charge happen as soon as physically possible, since you don't even need to have everything secured for that to trigger in this heist, with dozers spawning in as soon as you just enter the warehouse. Seriously, that's just ridiculous. I may have started this video saying that I think delivery charge is a good stealth heist, and I do stand by that, but it drags on far too much with the sheer amount of loot you need to move around, and the fact that all of it is pretty much in one place most of the time is extremely grating after enough time, doubly so when guard patrols make half of the stealth experience just waiting. Delivery charge isn't bad, but it's not exactly great either, which I guess is a pretty apt description of the content for YouTube as a whole. With that said, we're drawing closer to the end of this series as I only have one heist left to go over, but I'll be saving that for next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and I hope you take care.